Anna asked a good question, because maybe hopefully some of the rest of you have picked up on, we've only been talking about what when it comes to exposure and the flash? Aperture. We haven't talked about what? Shutter, and there's a reason for that. Because when you use the flash, you cannot adjust the shutter. When you use flash, you only use one shutter speed. That shutter speed is called the sync speed. Sync, S-Y-N-C, which is an abbreviation for the word synchronized speed. So when you use flash, you will only be using one shutter speed. That shutter speed is what we call the sync speed. Sync standing for synchronized speed. We'll get your comment or question in just 1 second, Gabe. Let me make my point and then I'll get to you, I promise. When I say synchronized speed, what do I mean? Think about a flash. I'm going to set the flash off. Let me turn this one back on again. I'll warn you before I set it off so it doesn't blind you. All right, I'm going to set this off. You guys ready? All right, okay, I'm not going to point it at you. I'll point it first. I want you guys to at least look, right? Okay, set it off. How quickly did the light...
You didn't set it off at all.
No, it went off.
Yeah, it went off.
Right. When that flash goes off, how quickly does it take for the light to go off and then just be gone? Fractions of a second. Because light travels at the speed of light, which is pretty fast, right? So it's very critical that when you take a photograph, right? Because remember, when you take a picture, you push the button, and that button's called the shutter release, which causes the shutter to open, allowing light to hit our recording medium, correct? Well, what would happen if I was using flash? Keep in mind, in most cases, the flash is attached to the camera. But what if I didn't have them attached, right? Can you borrow your camera again? What if I was trying to, for example, what if I was holding the camera and holding the flash? Because remember, I can set the flash off by hand, right? What if I was trying to hold the flash in the camera and I was trying to push both buttons at the same time? What do you think the likelihood is that I can get them to go off at the same time? Very simple. But you need them to be synchronized. Because if they're not, imagine I go to take a photo, I set the flash off. Remember, how quickly did that light go away? Just like that, right? So what if I set the flash off, then I push the button to take a photo? There would be no light, right? Or what if I pushed the button to take the photo, the shutter opened and then closed, and then the flash went on? Again, no light's going to hit my recording medium. I need it so that the flash goes off at the exact same moment that the shutter is open. I need to take a photo where I push the button, the shutter opens, and then while it's open, boom, that's when the flash fires. They must be synchronized, otherwise the light from the flash doesn't do any good. They must be synchronized. They must go off at exactly the same moment. We call that the sync speed, the synchronized speed. If you look at a camera, you can figure out what its sync speed is. In fact, I'm going to show you a couple older, or at least one older model camera. So this is an old Nikon FM10, not unlike those ProMaster cameras we were messing with earlier. So here's the shutter speed dial here on top. Which one of those shutter speeds do you think is the sync speed? 250. It's the one that's in red, right? You notice all the other shutter speeds are in white, but the one in red, that's the sync speed, right? Another way to figure it out, sometimes on some cameras, instead of having it in red like this one is, sometimes they'll have a little lightning bolt next to one of the shutter speeds. Again, we know that the lightning bolt icon is synonymous with flash. So if one of the shutter speeds has the lightning bolt next to it, that's the sync speed. All right, so now what I want you guys to do is grab your Nikon camera, and I want you to figure out which one of the shutter speeds on your Nikon is the sync speed. Go ahead and grab your camera and see if you can figure it out. So tell me which one of those shutter speeds is the sync speed. I'll give you a hint. It's typically somewhere between 60 and 500. So that narrows it down a little bit. Right? It's either 60 or 90 or 125 or 250 or 500. It's not going to be bold, I'm telling you right now.
You want us to tell you?
If you think you know, hold on for 1 second. All right, so which one's red? Did you find the one that's red?
No.
None of them are red. Okay. All right, which one has the little lightning bolt next to it? None of them do. All right, so Jasmine, you think you know what it is. What do you think it is? It is 80. It's either 80 or 90. Depending upon which model you have. Do you have the D50 or D40? Yeah, the D40 is 80. I think the D50 is 90. The easiest way to check, though, is to look in your manual. Actually, if you put the camera in program mode and you activate the flash, it'll automatically flip it into the sync speed. Really, though, the best way is to just look in your camera's manual. If you were to look in the manual of the Nikon D50 or D40, the sync speed is either 80 or 90, depending upon the model you have. Right? If you have the D50, it's 90. If you have the D40, it's 80. This camera is what? 250. It's important that you know what the sync speed of your camera is, because if you try to use flashes and you don't have the shutter speed set appropriately, let me show you an example of what can happen. So here are two different photos. I was messing around at the crime lab, and so Steve Butler, who's one of the lab managers, hey, Steve, I want to take a picture of you. So I turned the lights off in the lab, and I said, so I took two photos, because I wanted to show the difference between appropriate sync speed and the not appropriate sync speed. The photo on the left, this is taken with the correct sync speed, right? The photo on the right, you see this big black bar right there? Venture a guess, please, to tell me what causes that. That's not a shadow. It's the shutter. Exactly right. What it is because the shutter speed was set too fast, the sync speed on the camera was supposed to be at 125. I turned the sync speed up to, I turned the shutter speed up to 500. So 500 is faster than 125. So what happened? Remember, these two photos were taken in the dark. So what happened is when I took the photo at a shutter speed faster than sync speed, I pushed the button, the shutter opened, and then started to close as the flash went on. So what you're actually seeing here is the shutter is actually covering up part of the recording medium as the flash is going on. So, critical, you must use the right shutter speed. Which means also then, so Anna asked a good question. Couldn't I just change my shutter speed if I needed more light? When it comes to flash, the answer is no. You will have to leave the shutter speed at the sync speed. So how do I add more light? I could increase the amount of light by using a more powerful flash or another light source. In crime scene photography, one of the things we do have that's helpful in some cases, especially in accident scenes, sometimes the emergency response vehicles, the fire trucks, will have these big, massive floodlights. That's very helpful, but we don't always have them. So sometimes we're going to have to use a very specialized technique, which I'm going to talk about towards the end of tonight, called painting with light, where I'm not going to use a more powerful flash. I'm going to use the same flash, but I'm going to have it fire many times to paint the entire area with light.